Hi there, Dan Thorpe here. Today I want to talk about the sheer ridiculousness of guitar tuition. Now, there's a lot of good guitar teachers out there, and I don't want to be critical of anybody, but there is some crazy teachers out there, and I've heard some horror stories over the years. For example, I posted this recently on my Facebook page. Have you ever had guitar lessons? And then somebody, well, there's lots of good replies, but Catherine left this reply. This is what she said. Lesson number 1, my teacher said, "What do you want to learn? Here's a CD of songs I wrote and recorded." Lesson 2. Here's a G chord. Lesson 3, here's a D chord. Lesson 4, here's a C chord. Lesson 5, here's an E chord. Do you see a pattern there? Lesson 6, the teacher says, "I feel like there's a lyricist inside of you. For next week, I want you to write a country song." Catherine's face, shocked. "Okay, I'll waltz then," he says. Lesson 7, there was no lesson 7. And that should be a lesson to the guitar teacher, really. Okay, so what happened there? Okay, it's just crazy. That highlights a lot of what is wrong with guitar tuition. Because, firstly, the teacher, what was he doing? He was just teaching surface level stuff for the first 5 weeks. You know, anybody can just Google how to play a D chord, how to play a G chord, how to play a C chord. You know, it's all surface level stuff. But playing those chords with proper technique, with proper posture is so much more important. For example, a lot of people are taught to play like this. Okay, in what I call a lazy position, and that's okay. It's not ideal. I don't teach beginners that way. I prefer to teach them in a classical position. But even so, people are just told, put your fingers there, 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 play a D chord, and it's just like, okay, this is what they get for the first probably couple of months, and it's just like, but you can see all things that are wrong. Turn shoulder, thumb over the top, tricep, tense, lean over, lots of pressure, lots of pain. And it's just like, the teacher will just say, just keep battling, don't worry, you'll get calluses and your fingers will toughen up. That's really common advice, but it's terrible advice. So what should the teacher be doing instead? He should be teaching proper technique. Now, I'm a big fan of classical style tuition, okay, and classical technique. Even though 90% of my playing tends to be folk, fingerstyle, blues, acoustic rock, and some electric rock as well, okay? That sort of thing. So, why is classical tuition so important? Well, for starters, they'll get them playing in a much better posture, a much better position. Sitting like this, I've got my left leg on a footstool, guitar's raised, headstock's nice and high, okay? It's not over there, okay? Well, it's not over here where I've got to really reach. I mean, I need binoculars just to see where the nut of the guitar is right there. Put it like this, it's so much easier. My wrist is straight, okay? Play with straight wrist, so I'm not all bent and hunched over. And then I'm close to the frets. I'm playing with a nice light touch. And it's effortless, okay? I mean, it does require concentration, but I'm not pressing hard. So that's the first thing a lot of guitar teachers miss. They just don't even know this, or, you know, they'd really just touch on this sort of stuff with a tiny, tiny amount. But classical teachers will go to town and they'll focus on that sort of thing. Now, I'm not saying you should go into the yellow pages. I mean, does anybody use the yellow pages anymore? But I'm not saying you should go into that and find your your local classical teacher, but I'm just saying you should study proper technique. I call it core fundamental technique because it is just the absolute basics. The way you touch the string, the way you sit with the guitar is so important. And that's the first thing that most guitar teachers will miss. So you always want to watch out for that. If you have a guitar teacher and he doesn't mention these sort of things, then I'd say, unless you're a really experienced player with, and you can play comfortably, it's worth questioning them and asking them. If not, you might be better off looking elsewhere or learning these things from other people. Okay, I'm not saying ditch your teacher at all, but learn this stuff. Because I know a lot of people get really attached to their guitar teacher or their favourite YouTube tutor, but you got to learn this stuff along with the fun stuff. You can't just learn the fun stuff. The fun stuff is great, but it's not fun if you can't do the basics. If your core fundamental technique is bad, basically. So you get that sorted, and then that allows you, it unlocks the door to having more fun. And the second thing I want to talk about really as well, it's quite comical really, is just why do guitar teachers want to show off, okay? There's so many good guitar teachers who can play to a really good standard, but they might not be the greatest teachers, and a lot of them, well, a lot of people get into this world of teaching music and doing lessons because they're struggling to make ends meet from playing and performing. For me, it was different. I enjoy playing, I enjoy performing, and I still enjoy doing a bit of it now, but it was never the big dream to try and make it in the music industry or anything like that. To be honest, there's a lot of late nights involved, and I quite like being at home, I quite like being with my family, and I quite like chilling. got a young son, and you know, the idea of playing lots of gigs is just not that appealing to me. I do want to get back and play live a little bit more and have more fun, but for me, just jamming, enjoying and teaching and helping people is so much more appealing. But a lot of guitar teachers, so I've heard over the years, treat their lessons as like mini gigs. Now, if you've ever had a teacher who sits there and you know, you're just saying, I just want to be able to just, you know, finger pick a few chords and stuff, and he's just there going, okay, and now then we're going to do some blues in D flat. And then he's just sort of riffing away and doing, you know, like fast licks. Or starts tapping away. Starts doing stuff like that. And I'm like, you know, is anybody impressed by that? I mean, it's not the greatest on acoustic, but you can just imagine it on electric. Somebody's there shredding away. And you're like, I just want to play some Simon and Garfunkel, you know? It's not the most appealing thing in the world, okay? I've been there as well. I once turned up to a guitar lesson and I was banging on the door. Well, I wasn't banging on the door. I knocked it gently at first and then there's no answer, so I knocked a bit harder. Still no answer, so I knocked a bit harder. And then eventually somebody come to the door, he opened it and he was like half asleep. He was wearing leather trousers, his hair was long and scraggy, and there was just like a blast of smoke coming from behind him. It was like being at a gig at a Madonna concert or something. But it was cigarette smoke. He'd just been sitting there and I think he was very hungover and he was just like, oh, sorry man. It was like your typical rocker from the 80s. And to be honest, he was a nice fella. I ain't gonna lie, he was a lovely fella, but we didn't really gel because he wasn't the most, let's say, professional. So anyway, we're sitting down, I asked him, I said, I want to play a little bit of classical stuff. So then he shows me some incredibly complicated classical piece that I was just like, there's no way I'm going to learn that today. It was full of massive stretches all up here and everything, and he was just like, okay, I'm not ready for that. Then I asked him about the pentatonic scale, just one brief question, and he started going on about playing a pentatonic scale in all these different positions. He was riffing it up and down everywhere. And I was just like, that's kind of cool, but that's not really what I was asking. And it was just like anything I asked him, it was just wanted to show examples of his brilliant playing. And you know, then he started criticising some of the guitarists that I liked, like Noel Gallagher, Johnny Marr, Cat Stevens. I think those were the three. And I was just like, those are guitarists that I enjoyed. And he was just like talking about people like Steve Vai, Joe Satriani and all those. And I was just like, okay. And he was just like, those guys are rubbish that you like and all this. And I was like, this isn't great, okay? First of all, you're treating it like a mini performance, and now you're just dissing all my favourite musicians, you know? So that wasn't great. So if you've ever experienced that, you'll know what it's like. You know, going to a guitar teacher, it should be for you, not for them, okay? So if your guitar teacher ever shows off, like, you know, they do a lot, it's never great. And that's what Catherine's teacher was on about. You know, here's a CD of all my songs, and it's just like, well, I don't really want to learn your songs, okay? I want to play songs that I love. Okay, so anyway, I digress. Those are just some funny little stories about guitar lessons, teachers, okay, and things to watch out for, okay? Like I say, you always want to focus on good core fundamental technique, and if your teacher doesn't show you that, then do look elsewhere. Find a good core fundamental technique. An example of that is just pressing with a light touch. Get close to the frets. Okay, you don't need to press hard, you don't need to squeeze the life out of the guitar. You can just press with a nice light touch, close to the frets, take off all the pressure so you get a dead note, and add a tiny bit of pressure on. And once you get used to doing that, playing with the lightest touch possible, almost like a butterfly touching the strings, you'll realise, which most people never realise, or it takes them far too long to realise, that you do not need much pressure. And then your fingers do not need these big, crusty, horrible calluses, you know, that look like pork scratchings. Nobody needs that, okay? So get close to the frets, play with a super light touch, practice that every day, get used to being relaxed when you play, use good posture, good positioning, and the right amount of pressure. It all makes such a massive difference, and like I say, it will allow you to have more fun and do all the fun stuff, whether that be on YouTube or with other teachers or whoever, okay? So, hope you enjoyed that. If you want more help from me, go to fingerstyle101.com/secrets. There's plenty more advice there. There's a little free mini course, Kickstarter mini course that's going to make a massive difference. If any of these things I talked about today resonated, you'll definitely love that. Okay, so check that out. And if you want a good beginner workout, check this out as well. Right, thanks for watching. Cheers. Bye-bye.